Hello, everyone. Today is February 3rd. This is the release engineering sub-project meeting for SIG release. This is a meeting that will be recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. Right? So as I mentioned before we started recording, the agenda is in the Zoom chat, so please take a moment to drop your names on it. If anyone is interested in being having the prestigious role of note taker, please feel free to jump in and put your name on the agenda as well. So the first item is KubeCon EU talks. I'm not sure who put that up, but if you did, you want to shout out.
That was on the agenda from before the CFP closed for the maintainers track.
Ah, beautiful.
Prior meeting that didn't happen.
So the CFP closed for the maintainer track, everyone, and we have two talks accepted for the maintainer track. Allow me to pull them up. The first one is going to be a combination of kind of what we usually do, intro to the release team, as well as release engineering. And the second one will be around CI signal, starting to talk about that and putting more of a spotlight on the work that we're doing in CI signal, especially as we look to spin that out into its own sub-project. If any of you are interested in that, let us know. Yes. Cool. All right, so confusion around the one or two talks. Great question. So essentially what happened is, minimize. All right. Maintainer track and release. Does that work? Is that a full search? Okay. All right. Well, anyhow. So the first one is going to be Sasha and Daniel will be the anatomy of a Kubernetes release, success through team and tools. And you can read the overview here. And the second one will be myself and Jorge. And that will be a chat about CI signal and kind of, so demystifying CI signal, the link between Kubernetes testing and release. And that will be kind of an overview of some of the work that we do in the cycle to kind of glean, are we ready to release Kubernetes, and how we get through some of that. So Sasha, to your point, to your question, I think it was Sasha, right? Who asked. Kubernetes is quite a large project in comparison to the other CNCF projects. I think the email had initially said something around giving projects two talks for the maintainer track. And then allowing SIGs or allowing something that would be considered an activity, right? And for them, that's like SIG, sub-projects, so on and so forth. One talk per activity. For us, so it had mentioned something like leaders of graduated and incubating projects, right? So for the smaller projects, the leaders may be considered to just be the maintainers, right? So there may only be a few of them. But for the Kubernetes project, you've got leaders across all of the committees, all of the committees, the user groups, working groups, SIGs, right? And if you just do quick math on the SIGs, if they're allowed to, that's 44 plus, right? Add in all of the working groups and so on and so forth. So I think the space projection for the tracks had initially been on the assumption that I guess their definition for activities, where SIGs, subprojects, user groups, all that stuff would be counted as a single talk. So that's where that came from, and I think the sentence was like put together in a way that was open for kind of misinterpretation. But I think we've got all of that sorted out. Everyone who submitted a maintainer track proposal should have been accepted. If you are from a different SIG and did not have the opportunity to get one accepted, I think it's all sorted out. But if that's not the case, let us know, let someone know, let me know, and we can help escalate that. Any questions on that stuff? Awesome. So the next one up is the Contributor Summit. So the CFP for the Contributor Summit is still open. And I have, maybe we can figure out some ideas. I have one idea, which would be a kind of birds of a feather session between ourselves and working group Kate's Infra. Right, there's some work going on that we kind of collaborate on, not as frequently as maybe we could. So I wanted to get some ideas about like sitting down with them, drawing out some lines for different projects, and seeing what we can do in 2020 to move things forward. I see Bart is here actually, so Bart, if you have opinions.
Sorry, I didn't listen very carefully.
Sorry, what?
I didn't listen very carefully. Could you repeat?
Yeah, sure. So Contributor Summit, CFP still open. Idea for doing a birds of a feather between release engineering and working group Kate's Infra.
I think that it's actually a great idea, but I don't have any specific topics in mind right now. There may be the one which I have in mind is like the importance of communication, but it is like a very soft topic. I don't have a very like a lot of hard topics in mind.
Yeah, no, that's actually a bigger topic than you know. Yeah, no. If you think that's a good idea, we can continue to talk about it. I'll put something together.
Art, have you chatted much with the Art? Have you chatted much with others in the working group to have a sense of who might be there? Is there going to be a chunk of people there? Hope.
Not yet, because I have two topics which I'm currently discussing with working group, and this is the second one which I want to mention today, because I'm thinking about also doing, like taking some, forgot the name of the program from Google.
GSOC?
Yeah, so this is the thing which I'm discussing with people, and after that I want to start this topic about our BOF.
Okay. Are there things that you need from us today? Is there help that you would need on the SIG release side?
I don't think so.
We can provide, or
at this point we are mostly focusing on moving some smaller projects to our new infra, And the other topic is we are starting to rewriting the bash scripts for the new automation for the new infrastructure to Terraform. But this is just the point of idea and discussions about what and how much we want to rewrite currently.
Okay. Now I'm curious. Would you be interested at some point in coming to one of these meetings and doing, I guess, a demo, a walkthrough, what we've been working on since we started, kind of thing for SIG release? Yeah. Cool. All right. So maybe we'll try to schedule something in the next question mark amount of time.
I'm open. Just give me a few words and we can discuss and do some meeting.
Okay, cool. All right, anybody else? Ideas for Contributor Summit? Also, will you be there? Is anyone going to KubeCon Amsterdam?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, Dan, Arnaud, Sasha. Well, Dan and Sasha, I hope you'll be there for our SIG presentation. Yeah. All righty. Cool. Yeah. So in that section, feel free to, in the notes, feel free to just drop a note about who is going. If you're interested in getting together for something, we can do that. But last call for ideas. Or feel free to, yeah.
Maybe something about all the upcoming release tooling changes and plans. Like, I know that there might be multiple SIGs interested, like C cluster lifecycle was interested in our release tooling to kubeadm stuff. Maybe there was some stuff about branching. Maybe have a session that's going to cover all of that and present what's new and maybe talk a little bit about that. Will be something like that interesting.
Yeah,
I was
know
about to suggest
really
the same
cool.
thing. Lubomir should be there.
Yeah, that'd be really cool because we've got, like you mentioned, cluster lifecycle, interested in the branching stuff. SIG docs interested in the more branching stuff, the branch fast forward tools. I know that, on my side, I've used the release notes tool to generate release notes for other projects as well. And then we've also got external people who are starting to get interested in using the release notes tool, so we can maybe get together. Yeah, I think that would be good. All right, sweet. Really great idea. Thank you, Marco. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that is it for our agenda, actually. Does anyone have topics they want to discuss?
I know there's cutting a release tomorrow. I know we've done in the past kind of like a Zoom call to shadow that. Would that be something that would be possible for tomorrow's release?
Never. We've never done that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So Carlos and Sasha are the branch managers, and they are EU time based. If they want to do a call for that, y'all can definitely feel free to schedule. So I think Carlos said he's traveling today, but Sasha, if you want to set something up for that, you totally can.
Yeah. We would like to plan a call for tomorrow afternoon that Dan can join. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, I can adjust to whatever time is convenient for y'all.
Yeah, so something like 4 p.m. Would this fit for you?
What time zone? 4 p.m. what time?
4 p.m. European time zone would be -8 or 9 Pacific.
Yeah, that can work.
Good.
Cool. Thanks.
Sweet. All right. All right, so let's, any other topics?
Last week in the SIG release meeting, there was a fair amount of discussion about what it would take to have a plan for when we cut over on tools. We've had a fair amount of progress, but the SIG cluster lifecycle discussion around Kubernetes split out kind of drove the discussion that we don't feel quite ready to switch over yet, but what would our criteria be? What are the gaps? What could we try and get targeted focus on to write, implement, and test? Like tomorrow's release, the Alpha 3, we have we got an Alpha 4, Beta 0, 1, 2, and probably RC as well. Each of those become a point where we could run
A new tool.
close to production in tool, collect a little data in a safe-ish way compared to what we have. But if we have a deliberate plan for the next 8 weeks, we could probably get a lot more out of it and start bringing more things online. One thing specifically there, I feel like we can sort of start out at the leaves or start out at the top. And a week and a half ago or so, when you and I last talked, you were talking about trying to rewrite the top level main function in Anago just to straighten it out, not have it be so speculative and loopy. That might be an easy way to make some points where we could feel more safely a new tool could be inserted. But I don't know, progress on that or thoughts on sort of the big picture of all of this.
Yeah, so I mean, skeletonalize for anything new on Anago, I haven't gotten started with just yet. The main, the loopiness, I think you actually said that you wanted to try to tackle that, so I haven't done anything related to that yet.
I'm also open to help with Anago. I still remember my research about this topic, so if you give me more.
Yeah. So I think what I want to have happen first is Tim and I. So at least on the new tool side, I think I want Tim and I to lay down the skeleton for that, and then have people build around that. For the current iteration of it, I really wish we could just throw it in the fire and call it a day. But I think we discovered a few things that were, weird or not necessarily supposed to happen. One of which is the kind of the out of order committing for the changelog. And I know Sasha, you and Hannes have been working on firming up or doing steady reviews of PRs to firm up the Krell changelog tool. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we are mostly done with the transition between the changelog scripting to the Golang-based version. This works right now. And the next step would be to bring it into Anago. And we have 2 PRs up right now, which are both on hold because we are basically just waiting for the Anago skeleton, maybe. So we are not completely sure which strategy we want to choose. If we want to do it step-by-step migration from Anago to the Golang-based tools. So there's 1 PR up, which could be usually merged, but it would definitely break something because Krell is not in the path for Anago right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now it's a little bit, this is the critical part right now, in my point of view.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I know there was 1 or 2 that flew by that I approved around this, but this one is probably the big one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the meat and potatoes. All right. So the first one was making sure that we have everything that we need in the path, right? So that was the compile release tools update, right? So that step should still be happening. Right. Yep. Right. So that's the second phase, clone, and then compile release tools. So it should be available. let's see.
Can we test this somehow?
Yes, soon, coming soon. All right, so we've got blocking. Okay, this is updated to include blocking test grid tests, kubepkg, and release notes. We probably don't need the release notes one though, right? Or
No, I don't think so.
okay, all right. Okay, so I can take a look at this again, and I know you tweak some of this so that it pulls in the version. Yeah, this we can get in soon. Yeah, I think these releases are the perfect opportunity to these alpha releases are the perfect opportunity to test some of this stuff. So what I had done recently, and this thing is horribly broken right now. lng informing, right? Very red. Very red. So it's essentially so created a new job called CI release Anaga stage, and that job is failing for configuration issues, but I think it's attempting to pull a credential that is, come on, all right. It's attempting to pull a credential that's only available in the test infra trusted cluster. So that will not work. So I'm going to try to fix that today. But essentially the idea was just to get a look at that. All right. So essentially it runs GCP manager stage master attended. And this flag I need to do some tweaking on as well. But essentially what that's supposed to do is there was a PR that I did recently that adds a flag and support for attended releases, attended GCP submissions. So essentially all this does is add this new flag, and the flag will switch the async flag on or off for the G Cloud build submit. So I want to come back and fix the flag name so that it's clearer. Hannes made a good suggestion. But there are a few things I need to tweak in the test to make sure that they work. One, I want to see an actual test failure as opposed to a test failure related to CI, because I think we still need to wire the PROW credentials to be able to submit GCP runs within the staging project. So yeah, the idea, the short version was the idea of putting that test together is so that we can have staging consistently running in the background on some interval. Right now it's every 2 hours. We can probably shorten that once the test is, we can probably increase that interval once the test is running properly. I just have it at 2 hours so that we get a little faster signal there. So the idea there is for us to be able to safely, well, relatively safely test the changes against Anaga without having to have a release manager do that. So Sasha, once that works, we can, so I guess we can do it sooner. For an alpha, I care less if things break. And I think this is, based on what I'm reading, it all seems reasonable. I would say run through a mock stage and mock release with that, because you can do so from your branch. If you want to try that.
Yeah, sounds good. I think.
Yeah.
So this would work. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically everything you do right now to do a stage and release, but you'd include the release tool repo flag, as well as the release tool branch flag. And you should see those in like the, yeah, so you should see those in just linking a portion of the GCB stage cloud build. And basically what that will do is target the release repo against your fork and your branch instead of master. That way we can test it before it gets merged.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks. Awesome.
Which test grid board was that Anago one on?
The new one. RelEng informing. So there are a bunch of miscellaneous tests. There are a bunch of tests that are listed in miscellaneous, SIG release miscellaneous. I've always had a problem with figuring out a name for this board because I didn't want to call it SIG release engineering because of that stutter. But I was like, we should have one that is specifically for the release engineering tests and start to pull out things like release cluster up and release tests. And there's some on the master informing board that should probably be over there too. Verify packages, debs, RPMs, the build package debs and RPMs, like everything that is related to like, can we crank out a release? And are the images good? Should probably all live in that board as well. And once I know that they're all stable, there will also be like a RelEng blocking board. Cool. All right, so I've also been poking at a, and this will come up soon for y'all, Sasha. Been poking at removing the 114 jobs, right? So what I'm trying to do is remove the 114 jobs ahead of the branch cut. I think that we can separate the process of deleting the old branch and turning off CI, deleting the old branch jobs, not the branch itself, and turning off CI ahead of the branch cut, and then have the branch cut be a separate step. But the tools that we have today kind of assume that they're both the same. So this PR kind of works towards doing some of that. And there's a separate one. So if you're interested in seeing that, it's here. So initially this started off, I found a bunch of things that are interweaved with this. And some of those were listed here. One, making sure that so Catherine and I are now approvers for the generated tests, which is essentially a section of code that really only the two of us have been touching recently. Removing some of the older boards that were throwing errors during the PR. This one switches the dashboard tabs to reference the correct pseudo versions, right? So beta, you can see there are some older dashboards from the that are used in the generated tests. So they're moved to actually reference the version marker that they're targeted against. So lots of little tweaks. Also working on something that allows us to skip tests in the generation. So if I don't know how much is useful to show right now, but yeah, I'm kind of still working through this one, but it's Yeah. So some of what it's doing is essentially, yeah, this is kind of hacky right now. And I need to add some more print statements because this tool kind of doesn't have logs. But essentially the idea is that you'd be able to run it and okay, yeah, so that is starting to work. So if you look at, if we do a checkout of, and, oh, let's do all of that. All right, so with this change, if I remove, so what I did in a previous step is essentially remove remove the beta marker altogether within the test config, right? So what I wanted to see is if we could remove the beta marker and drop all of the beta tests during the time that beta doesn't really exist, right? So that time is now, right? It's basically all the way up until we do that beta cut. So I think historically we've not been, so essentially what will happen is we cut a branch, and that essentially starts to shift the current release in development into that release branch. So essentially what we want to start doing is testing master against that branch. So there are a bunch of tests that exist to test master against that branch. And if we can do upgrades, downgrades, left grades, right grades, all that good stuff. And then after the release happens, essentially that beta stays beta, right? Even though the next release in development would be, so right now, when 117 was out, 117 was the beta branch, and now that 118 is in development, so 117 is no longer beta. 117 is now the current stable, right? So 117 is now listed as the current stable as well as the beta, which kind of makes no sense. So we should just switch it off, right? So what happens here is we'll run this tool, and essentially it's, what is it? Pack update generated tests, and hit that. All right, so lots of pretty output. So now it'll kind of spit out that the marker was not found. It's going to skip a test generation because markers were not found. And my lovely error messages here that I'm going to clean up. But essentially what this does is I also have to clean up some of the spacing, but we can see now that that the tests were generated again, and you can see that the beta tests are kind of flushed now. So I still need some tweaks to do this, but essentially this is going to save someone money because there's a whole suite of tests that we'll no longer be using in between the time that the few months that we're not doing, we don't have a new beta branch. So yeah, any questions on that? Cool, awesome. So back to our question about what we need to do to start using some of the new tools. I think branch fast forward is probably usable today. I need to kind of do a gut check on some of that stuff. We also have, so I think changelog is just about ready to go. What else are we? Let's see.
Push build still has some work to be done, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to shadow the release tomorrow, because some of it, a lot of that is handled right now by Basil, and like that's kind of getting changed a little bit. And so we have to kind of like, it's not just strict translation basically from the bash scripts. So there's still a little bit of work to do on that, but I'm going to try and address that once I get a little more insight as to what's actually happening.
Yeah, so the release is actually not the best place to see push build work.
Okay.
It's, give me a second. Because push build essentially runs every CI run for, so so let's get this issue open first, and then back to Hound. All right, so CI Kubernetes builds, which is here. Is a periodic that runs every hour to do CI pushes. So the reason that you're kind of seeing that commingle with Bazel is that there is a CI Kubernetes Bazel build as well, right? That does some of that stuff. And if you want to see logs from this, how do we do that? Prow, CI Kubernetes build. Right. So you can check out one of these runs. And you'll see towards the bottom is basically what we do. Not super useful. What you want to look for in these logs is, all right, so that is release and release master blocking. So you'll see the Bazel build master one, but there's also a build master one, right? Build master one's the one we care about. This is the one that actually pushes the changes to the version marker files that we use. This is the one that pushes the latest .txt.
Got it.
So the test will essentially do a no-op when it recognizes that version already exists in the system. Basically, it'll look at the latest tag, determine what that version is, and then try to think about whether or not it has to do a build of it, right? So that test doesn't run to completion all the time. So what you want to do is find one that does, right? So that one ran at 10:30 Eastern today. So you can take a look at this. Also, we got some new doodads in, what is it, Spyglass, right? That explain what the pod, some of the pod info, the volume info, some of the tests, and the YAML config for Prow, which is pretty cool. I saw this over the weekend. So hats off to whoever in SIG testing was working on that. But yeah, check this one out. Come on. And that should have the info you need. Specifically, what you're looking for in this log is towards the bottom. After it does the build, it wants to push the build and starts around here. Yeah, so publishing the official pointer to Kubernetes release dev. Yeah, so all of the stuff, it's pushing CI build versions and some of these images. So check that out. It's, where does it start?
That's all right. I can parse it out here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So this is the strictly non-Bazel one, and we won't be, or we don't use Bazel for the release process, right? So
cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I also need to figure out what's going on with the Bazel one, because we push different version markers with the Bazel one. So it's like latest Bazel.txt, and then there's like latest Bazel RBE.txt, which is for the remote build execution ones. And do we need all of them? And who actually uses those tags? So around the stable, the Kate's stable, Kate's beta, Kate's dev version markers, I want to work towards getting rid of them this cycle as well. And that's that quick demo that I showed you for the generator script in TestInfra as part of that. Essentially, we want to identify all of the jobs that use odd markers, or these generic suffix markers, and tweak them to not do that. Tweak them to either target a latest or stable version. And then we want to remove any usage in non-generated tests of the of those version markers. And once we're fairly confident of that we've done a sweep of those properly, we want to turn off actually publishing those markers, see if any errors fall out of it. And then while all of that's going on is, so if you, one more screen share. So if you look at this, so there is a test config.yaml, which is what these jobs, is what the generator tool looks at to determine how to generate these jobs. So some of them have an interval listed, arguments listed, and the SIG owner, and all of that's used to kind of splat out what the proud and the job config should be. But you can see that the generic suffixes are kind of wired tightly to the job name. So I need to figure out what we would want to do there. I think the first step would be to figure out these Kate's versions, right? So in this version of the config, we have the beta marker removed, right? So if I actually never mind. But the beta marker essentially is listed at latest 17 right now, right? So we have to figure out what we want to do with these specifications, dev stable 1, 2, 3. And then also there is a node Kate's version, right? And that is, we'd have to do something similar there, where we figure out, so this is currently Kate's equals master, and then something similar for the release 117 pieces. So figuring out how we want the generator, it's really the interaction between the generator script and this test config file that would need to be refactored afterwards. But that can happen in the background. And yeah, but yeah, some of this is messy in the way it's currently configured. I think it's kind of evolved over time, and maybe it's not the thing that suits our needs anymore. Also, depending on how many of the tests we take a look at and maybe deem that they're no longer required, maybe this goes away altogether, right? Maybe this generation goes away altogether. So yeah, a few things to kind of try to figure out for the cycle. Any questions on that one? Cool. Any questions on any other topics? I could totally keep talking about this, but no? All right. So maybe let's do this with 10 minutes left, because I want to hear y'all talk too. Let's go around the room and talk about what people are working on in release engineering. Sasha, you first.
Yeah, I'm working on the migration of the bash scripting to Golang tools, and for sure also on branch management as well.
Tim.
I will take up the top level main hack in Anago to try and linearize it.
Sweet. Marco.
I'm not working on anything right now, but I like to pick up on something if there is something to work on.
Cool. I know I owe you a response for some issue, right?
Yes.
Do you recall off the top of your head what that one is?
Oh, I can try to find it.
Okay. And all right, Jim.
Yes, my whole world was getting ready for the CKA exam, and now that that's behind me, focusing on learning Golang a little bit better. And in turn, that's going to lead to some of the KREL, the docs fast forward migration that we're talking about. So I'm thinking over the next week or two here, I'll probably be tapping some of y'all on the shoulder for some help. I'm seeing that kind of go through to completion this cycle.
Sweet, awesome. Dan.
I've been trying to do some work on push build, but mostly just been reviewing most of Sasha's work and trying to provide feedback there where needed, but I hope to push forward on some other parts of curl soon.
Sweet. So yeah, let me know how you get with push build. Push build is like one of those magic things that we can unlock. If we do that, so two things we have to figure out. One is versioning for the repo. If we figure out versioning for the repo, we can essentially disconnect push build from essentially have the Kubernetes get push build or get krell push or whatever we're calling it. I think that's what we're calling it, krell push. From K release, instead of pulling it at master, we can pull it at versions. So we need to figure that out. But that also prevents us. That also brings us to a place where we can have certain branches use certain versions of krell push as well. Our pull release cluster up will does a push build at the end because it's essentially doing what the Kubernetes CI Kubernetes build job is doing. It's just adding a fake focus, so that it kind of skips all the tests in between. It just is it's enough of a smoke test to determine if we've done anything within that PR to break Kubernetes or to break the push build process, right? So that's what that's for. So yeah, I think we can vet out a bunch of those changes we can even do like a prototype job and add a separate job that targets the krell push instead of the normal push build. We can try that out.
Cool. Sounds good.
Cool. All right. And did I miss anyone? Taylor? Did I say Taylor?
Hey.
Hey.
Hey. You just hear a small voice in the background. So kind of like Jim, I'm lagging a little bit behind in that I'm going for my CKA as well, setting up on that as well as some Golang. So very excited. Going to be jumping into some tickets and just kind of feeling some of the things after I come up to speed on that, which I'd say T-minus like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Right now, involved in the 1.18 release as a release lead shadow. Very excited about that. So also kind of picking up some info there and working with Jorge on understanding the quote unquote witchcraft behind some of the test rail grids and boards and kind of figuring out how to read the tea leaves over there. But other than that, very excited for what is coming in 2020.
Awesome, and congrats on all that stuff. I think you will do an awesome job there.
So do for the swag.
Do for the swag. All right. So I see a few. New faces. If you want to say hi, or maybe just one. Meenakshi. Totally fine if you don't want to say hi, but if you want to talk about what you're working on or looking to get out of SIG release engineering, feel free to. All right, Arnaud.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, I was supposed to help Anis and Carlos about image building. We had a conversation 2 weeks ago. I made a huge comment. Let me find it. I can't copy the link. So I'm waiting from Anis and Team All Clear. I think, yeah. About what's the next step.
Woo! I think I owe a comment there too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So for those clicking in, we're essentially trying to figure out what to do with image building on Kubernetes. These images have classically, ooh, look, a conflicting file already. These images have classically been kind of hand built and then built based on the Docker files there, but then pushed to a Google repository, Google container repository by people with access to push to Google container repositories. So moving into the image building process, and I set off my Google Assistant. Wonderful. So part of what we need to figure out, part of what that PR is doing is cleaning up some of the make files that are and Docker files that are involved in creating primarily the Debian images that we have. So Debian base, Debian IP tables, the Debian hypercube base, and so on and so forth, and making them, enabling them to run within our image building and promotion process. So I think there are some things that we still need to figure out about ownership and doing an overall review of that PR. So if anyone has bandwidth and wants to take a look at that PR, go for it. But I think we're getting close. I think that brings us to a nice next step. So, all right. All right. I'm not seeing any more new faces. If anyone wants to leave us with some final words or something, we've got 3 minutes till the end. Okay, you guys are all. Everyone's nice and quiet. It's I'm getting a lot of Monday vibes here.
In my mind's eye, I keep seeing my BIOS loading screen, so I'm not sure if that's it or what. But
All All right, y'all. I will let you go. Catch you at the next one. Thank you all for coming, as usual. Thank you all for the work that you do. Catch you soon.
See you later.
Bye bye.
I like that, Tim. Later.